So today I want to talk about why is it important to have a strong mind in Buddhism. Most Buddhist training that happens, many spiritual schools, you arrive and you study with the teacher and they tell you just do these things and then you're supposed to just do them. But I'm a person, my personality is like, well, why? I'm very rebellious. I'm like, I don't know if I want to put that energy and time and effort into doing that unless you show me why. So I want to share with you why it's so important to develop a strong mind on this path of Trikaya Buddhism. The very short answer, which might freak you out, is it helps prevent insanity. Basically, because we're studying the mind, we're examining how it works, and in that process, the structures that have been built start to fall away. The concept of self eventually dissolves, and if your mind is not strong, then that can be very disorientating and it can send you into a delusional state. But the good news is if you do the practices of mindfulness, of contemplation, of concentration, which leads to meditation, you develop a very strong mind. And then when you start to go into these higher states, there's a lot of intensity, but you're able to hold fast to the path. So this system that's been developed of developing a strong mind allows us to go further on the path. If you just try to skate and don't do the different practices, like when you sit to meditate and you actually put in the effort to concentrate into one point, that's hard for a lot of people in the beginning because you're all over the place. So if you don't put in that effort, then you never enter into silence. You just sit there regurgitating thoughts and then getting distracted by sensation, and you fall into daydream, and you might have some very interesting experiences. You might even start astral traveling, but you'll never meditate. You never actually go into silence. So that effort that we put forth of concentrating into one point, we focus on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. And everything else will start to come and pull at your attention, pull you this way, pull you that way. But because you make this commitment that, no, for this amount of time, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to sit and focus. That starts to build your concentration skills, which can then be applied to the whole rest of your life. Now when we start to walk around, we can actually pay attention to where our mind is taking us throughout the day. If we don't have that basic level of concentration, if we haven't built up that little bit of muscle, that mental strength, then when we try to pay attention, try to practice mindfulness as we're interacting with the world, we very easily get distracted. We very easily fall into habitual patterns that take us to the same place over and over and over again, which then when we do sit down and meditate, instead of actually meditating, we start to rehash like the same thing over and over again. The other option is to actually do the practice where you pay attention, and we play different games. One of the most popular ones that I teach is the gratitude and beauty game. So when you watch your mind start to spin out, you feel that you're no longer in a happy, peaceful place. You consciously and deliberately find something in your immediate environment that you feel is beautiful or that you can feel gratitude towards. And you play this little game of tennis. Because you're focused on something that's beautiful, like, oh, I love the color of this scarf. That purple is just so beautiful. No, you should be really upset right now. These horrible things are happening in the world. And I say, nope, I'm going to focus back on the beautiful colored purple scarf in front of me. No, you should really be like concerned about this other thing. Nope, I'm going to focus on the purple scarf. And so we play this very private game of tennis over and over again until we actually shift into the state of beauty. This game that we play is strengthening our mind every time we refocus the mind. Now, when you get really good at this game, sometimes we say, oh, well, that's good enough. I can do that. I don't need to do anything else. But your brain is still kind of marshmallowy. And there's still, you still get easily distracted by different sensation, by different emotions that come up. So we keep at the game, then we can add some more physical aspects to our practice where we make a game out of cleaning our home. So we organize our physical space and say, okay, let me line up all the silverware. Let me put the glasses in the cabinet in a logical way. So we first have to determine what is that logical way. One that's I found useful is the ones I use most often are on the lower shelf, and I have them organized in my mugs. And then you look at the other parts of your home that might have clutter and start to declutter all of that and put it in a logical way. And this has two purposes. One is it's a way to help strengthen your mind. The other is if you can set up your home in such a way that it makes sense to a stranger. So a random person can just walk in your house and figure out where everything is. That's the goal. Because when we start to go into these really high states where we start to actually shift our complete being, we want to be able to go into our home and find whatever it is that we need. Now, if you have everything's a mess and you have your own order of things, this is something I struggle with. I have my own order of piles where I know where everything is. But if it's not in any discernible logical order, then what happens is we have to actually shift back to the person that we were when we created that order in order to find what it is we're looking for. And then, so we've just undid the work that we've done on the spiritual path, in a way of speaking. So this is another mindfulness game that we play of this, or keeping our, number one, organizing our home, and then keeping up with the maintenance of keeping it organized. Now, I've watched people take this on and become very obsessive compulsive with it. So I want to warn you about, don't do that. Don't drive yourself bonkers, and don't alienate your guests that come to your house by screaming at them, no, the milk has to be perfectly lined up in the refrigerator next to the cheese. Because now you're dealing with, weird energy from people. But remember, this is just a private game that I play to keep my mind strong. And then it's less that you have to carry around. If you have to remember, oh, I put that really important piece of paper in this particular place, and if I forget, then I'm in trouble. Instead, file it somewhere that makes sense. So if you weren't there, somebody could come in and find it if it's needed. Then we have the other benefit or importance of having a strong mind. It allows us to better control our energy body, this subtle body that it's about the same size and shape as our physical body, but it's made of energy, and it can expand, it can contract. When we're about to take a trip, it can go and check out conditions for us and report back. If we're walking into an unknown situation, we can feel. And I talk more about this in other classes, so I won't go into super detail. But everyone has this ability. Sometimes we call it a psychic ability. But it's really just our subtle energy body that's giving us sensorial information, and it moves in a very different way than our physical body. But if our mind isn't strong, then our energy body gets sloppy and it just moves around. We might walk into a room and just splatter it all over everybody. And then all of a sudden now we're feeling everybody in the room, and if they're not in a bright and happy place, that can be very heavy. So instead, if we practice mindfulness of the energy body, we can use our breath to inhale and pull it in at our navel center and keep our energy body nice and tight around us. And this both at the same time strengthens our mind, because we've added this level of complexity to our mindfulness practice. And then it also makes our energy body stronger because it's closer to our body. And that way, when you want to use your energy body to gain information, there's practices that we can do to allow that to happen. But again, you can't do those practices if your mind isn't strong. So, and finally, one of the strongest benefits, or one of the best benefits of having a strong mind, is the intensity that we face on the spiritual path. When we meditate, when we practice mindfulness, our awareness is expanding. We are literally becoming more aware. And what does that translate into in a practical level? Is sensitivity. We become more sensitive to our environment. We become more sensitive to our own thoughts. We become more sensitive to our own emotions. So there's one school of thought, the Stoics, that are like, just push those emotions down. They're just feelings. They pass and they don't mean anything. And that can work, but that can also lead to a lot of spiritual bypassing, where we enter into a delusional state of pretending that we're not feeling anything. And so we kind of separate our mind out, compartmentalize, and any emotions that arise, we just put them off to the side. And that works for a while. But eventually our sensitivity, our awareness reaches a point where that closet where you've been shoving all those emotions, you have to open. And it can be very intense. So having a strong mind allows you to withstand that intensity. And then going forward, once you start to allow yourself to experience emotions, it's very interesting, because as we progress on the path, everything speeds up in terms of our sensorial processing. So let me give you an example. I wrote about this a long time ago on my blog, and then it's also in my Unreasonable Joy book. There's a post or an essay called Snakes, Ropes, and Mammograms. And I had a mammogram, and I had been putting it off. I put it off for a couple of years because I have chronic pain, and I'm like, I don't want to go through that pain. And finally, after a few years, my doctor talked me into, no, you really need to go and get it done. And so I went, had my mammogram, and I got an abnormal result. They found a lump. And it's like, oh. And so I get the notice that, or my doctor told me, like, you need to go for more testing. And unlike other more civilized countries where they do it immediately, I read this little Facebook post, I think it was the Netherlands or some country in Europe. Like, if you have a mammogram and you have an abnormal result, like, they read it right away, so you don't even leave from your appointment. You immediately get the next scan done, and that way you know, yes or no, do I need treatment? And if you need treatment, then they start treatment. And if you don't, then you know, and all happens like within the course of that one appointment. But here, you get I only found out because I happened to have a doctor's appointment, so they told me, and then the next day I got the message through the little portal, and then I got the letter in the mail saying call, and then I get the phone call. So all that happened over the course of a few days, and then I scheduled the appointment, and it's not for a few weeks. But when you get that kind of news, obviously all these emotions come up, and it's very intense. And so I just watched what was happening. And there's the 5 or 6 stages of grief that you go through. And I watched my mind spin through each one of those stages, all within the course of less than an hour. It was fascinating because there was no resistance. This is the power of a strong mind, is you're able to allow these very intense emotions, not just the negative ones, but the positive ones too. They just rush through you completely unobstructed. And so I went through this whole grieving process of the what if, and then at the same time I'm looking at it. There's a story of the rope and the snake. That's a yogic story of somebody walks into a dark room, and in the shadows they see a coiled shape. And is it a rope or is it a snake? Do I need to feel like there's danger? Do I need to protect myself? Or is it just a rope and it's not a big deal? And so I'm watching my mind, go back and forth. Is it a rope or is it a snake? Is it a rope? Is it a snake? And then so if you're present, you can explore both possibilities. If it's a rope, it's like, okay, no big deal. You just go back to what you're focusing, whatever it is you're working on. If it's a snake, then it's like, oh, then is it a poisonous snake? Do I have to do anything about it? If it's not a poisonous snake, then, oh, it's a little bit of a hassle because maybe you need that room and you need to get the snake out. But if it's a poisonous snake, then that's a whole different situation. So your mind can jump through all these different hoops, but at the same time, it's complete illusion, because in that moment of unknowing, that moment of waiting, you don't know it's a rope or a snake. But because we strengthen our mind, we can withstand this intensity. And I got to practice again this week. I went to log into my book mailing list account that I've been collecting for the past 20 years, like 800 names, and it was gone. My whole account was just completely deleted, and it was my fault because I hadn't logged into it in 26 months, and after 24 months they delete it, apparently. And so there was that big rush, and I already had a headache, so I had very narrow band of attention to begin with. And I'm watching myself, be like, okay, now I'm completely unsure of what to do because I had my plan of like what I'm going to do this thing, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you. And it's like, oh, what do I do? And so I spun out a little bit and realized, okay, I have all this emotion. It's like, okay, I need to let it go. So then, like, all of a sudden, there's big tears of mourning, cry about my list for about 60 seconds. But it was really intense. It was that, whew. It was like, oh, okay. And then I let go of the list. It's like, well, it's gone. I can't get it back. So what do I need to do? Oh, I need a new email service because the one I had been using changed their rules, which is part of why they're deactivating accounts. So I got online, got some suggestions, signed up for a service, and started collecting emails again. You can go to Turiya.com, sign up. But I was only able to process everything that quickly because I have a strong mind, because of these Buddhist practices that we do. So they have a very practical benefit. The biggest being that it allows us to go into very, very high states of attention. It allows us to continue to drop all of these personas that we put on, all of these structures and attachments of who we think we are and how we think this world works, starts to fall away when we go into these very deep meditations. And having a strong mind allows us to kind of ride that energy without being taken out by it. Now, if on the other hand your brain is all marshmallowy, you have a really high meditation, and you might walk around for a few hours or days in bliss, where you're just like, oh yeah, that was awesome, but you have a really hard time functioning. It's like, can you actually go to work? Or are you too blissed out? Can you actually go to the grocery store and buy what you need? Or is just everything so shiny and I just gonna buy everything? And you get home and you have nothing of what you need. So that can happen. Or you can have the rug pulled out from under you, and that onslaught of sorrow hits you, and now you're completely immobilized until the energy starts to go down. So Buddhism, meditation, is not just about stopping thought. That's the basis. That's where we start. But it's also about developing in such a way that your mind becomes stronger and stronger. So when you're struggling, when you're feeling yourself spinning out and you're having a hard time, and you're able to pull yourself back to center, that's a wonderful accomplishment, because in that moment you've just made that mental muscle stronger. So try to remember that. Try to remind yourself when you are struggling, when you are having a hard time, and you've completely blown your practice, you forgot everything that you learned, and you're feeling bad. Be like, wait a minute, I can always start again. I can always begin again. And right now, I have the presence of mind that I'm face first in the gutter, and everything sucks. So let me go back to my very basic game of beauty and gratitude. Let me find that beauty in this moment, in this present environment that I now find myself. And allow that to pull you back to center. And then you say, okay, now I'm Feeling a little bit better, let me maybe practice some meditation, build up my energy again. And then now that I've got a little bit more clarity, what is it that I need to do right now? What is the Dharma? What's my next step in this moment? And having a strong mind allows us to see the moment-to-moment steps. When our brain is more mushy, we tend to grasp for the end result. We say, I want this, but we can't see the things we have to go through to get there. So we just sit there and we cry. We say, I want this, I want this, I want this. And we just are miserable. But if we have a strong mind, we can say, okay, I want that, but how do I work backwards to where I am and do what's the step that I need to take right now that brings me in that direction? And then, is that the right direction? Is what I'm clinging to, saying I want, really what I want? So that's where we get into a whole nother class. So let's meditate some more. So sit up nice and straight. We'll do the chakra technique. So we'll start on the navel center, and then we'll move up to the heart, and then finally to the third eye. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Or are we all just... Yes, Agata.
May I ask where the songs came from?
Oh, that is an artist named Heron. Herrin.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's amazing. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, I don't play the music because I don't have the copyright to distribute it. But he is an amazing artist. Unfortunately, he did pass away, I want to say right before or as the pandemic started. But I think that you can still buy music directly from his website, which then gets his wife more money than if you get it through iTunes or Spotify or something. The streaming services are really do not pay well. So whenever possible, try to buy music directly from the artist. But yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's Heron.
Wow.
But yeah, that's another way we can work the mind too, is to play with different music, because it really the vibration of the music really can shift us into different ways, and the stronger your mind becomes, the easier it becomes to meditate to any sound. In the beginning, we can be like, no, I have to have these exact conditions. I need my noise canceling headphones with my specific music, and that's fine to start with. But as your mind grows stronger, you can meditate to just whatever ambient sounds are around you, even if it is a trash truck pounding outside, as we get occasionally. So are there any other questions, comments? No. Well, the solstice is coming next week, so I don't know about you, but it's like been buzzing. Like, I hardly slept at all last night because the energy is building and building and building. So make sure you have a project to put all this energy into. This is a powerful time of year. The energy is, just bubbling up. And if we don't have a way to focus that energy, if we don't have a project in the physical world to direct that power and energy into, it's going to go somewhere. It's going to go to your habitual patterns, which may or may not be supportive of your life that you're trying to create. So make that conscious choice of, okay, all this energy is pushing through me and it's really intense and maybe a little uncomfortable, but by directing and putting your full focus into a project that allows that energy to move through you, and it helps to buffer some of the intensity, and then you can do really cool stuff. So this afternoon we have Sangha Day. Today is Sangha Day. Every month we have a community meeting at 2 p.m. And then after our community meeting, where we talk about the different volunteer tasks that need to be done, then we go and have fun. We play. So I hope you can join us for our 2 p.m. meeting. You can look on our website for the Zoom link under the community tab. And then we'll also be here in person. So have a wonderful day, and no class next week because of the OB Street Fair, and then we will be on retreat. So we'll see you the following week. Even though it's going to be 4th of July, we'll still be here.
Is it really?
Almost. I think we have one more week. Yeah, because I think, 22nd, so 29th. Yeah, I think so. We might have.
This year's races.
But yeah, so it's going by